Who do you think has the power to hurt you the most? A friend? A stranger? No. The deepest wounds come from the people who were supposed to love you. Your own family. What happens when the father who abandoned you suddenly comes back? Not to make amends, but because he needs something from you. Welcome to AGS Stories, where true stories of betrayal, resilience, and justice come to life. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and let's dive into today's powerful story. My dad never wanted me. He walked out before I even had the chance to know him. And now, after 25 years of silence, he's back. Not to apologize, not to reconnect, but because he needs something my kid needs. Growing up, I used to imagine what having a father would be like. Would he have held my hand while we crossed the street? Would he have been there to cheer me on during school plays? Would he have told me I was smart, beautiful, and capable when I doubted myself? I didn't know what a father was supposed to be, but I knew what he wasn't. He wasn't there. Michael Parker disappeared from my life when I was barely 2 years old. My mother, Lisa, was left to pick up the pieces, working long hours to make ends meet while raising me alone. I didn't understand the weight she carried at the time, only that she was always exhausted, always trying, always making sure I had enough, even when she didn't. I used to ask about him. As a little girl, I'd see my friends get picked up by their dads after school, running into their arms like they were the safest place in the world. And I'd wonder, where was my safe place? Where's Daddy? I asked one night, clutching a crayon drawing of a family that didn't exist. My mother froze for a second, then forced a soft smile. He's busy, sweetheart. That was the answer I got for years. He was busy, too busy to call, too busy to send a birthday card, too busy to love me. When I turned 16, I searched for him online. It wasn't hard to find him. Michael Parker had built a whole new life. A different wife, a son, a daughter, a family. I stared at the pictures, at the smiling faces, and realized the truth. It wasn't that he didn't want a family. He just didn't want me. That night, something inside me shifted. I let go of the idea that I would ever mean anything to him. I stopped daydreaming about a father who might suddenly regret leaving. I threw myself into my studies, determined to build a life where I never needed him for anything. If he could erase me from his life, I could erase him from mine. And I did. For years, I didn't think about him. I graduated, went to college, and became a nurse. My life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. I had fought for every opportunity, built everything from scratch, and carried no expectations from a man who had never given me a second thought. Then one evening, my phone rang. An unknown number. I answered out of habit. Hello. A woman's voice. Unfamiliar. Cautious. Sophia? This is Karen, your father's wife. We need to talk. I froze. The air in my apartment suddenly felt thinner, my pulse hammering in my ears. I hadn't heard that name in years. My father. The words felt foreign on my tongue. There was a pause. Yes, it's about Michael. He's very sick. He doesn't have much time. I swallowed. The man who never gave a damn whether I lived or died suddenly wanted to talk to me. I sat down, gripping the edge of the table, my mind spinning. This wasn't an apology. This wasn't a long overdue moment of regret. This was something else. Then she said it. The real reason she had called. He needs a kidney. Just like that, the years of silence made sense. He didn't need a daughter. He needed a donor. And I was supposed to care. After 25 years of being a ghost in his life, he wanted something from me. And for the first time, I had power over the man who once had none for me. I exhaled slowly, gripping the phone. I see. For years, I had wondered if he had ever thought about me, if he ever regretted walking away. Now, I had my answer. I gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. My father, the man who never cared if I even existed, was sick. He was running out of time, and now, after 25 years of silence, he suddenly needed me. Not for love, not for closure, not because he regretted walking away, because he needed a kidney. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat as I let Karen's words settle over me. I barely noticed the dull hum of traffic outside my apartment, the soft glow of my desk lamp flickering as if it, too, was hesitating. My father needed something only I could give him. A father is supposed to be a protector, a provider, A presence. Michael Parker was none of those things. I closed my eyes, and suddenly I was 5 years old again, sitting at the kitchen table with a handmade birthday card in front of me. It was decorated with uneven hearts and a stick figure drawing of a man and a little girl holding hands. "Can I send this to Daddy?" I had asked, hope dancing in my voice. My mother froze mid-stir as she made spaghetti on our tiny stove. She hesitated just a second too long before forcing a smile. "Of course, sweetheart." I never got a response. For years, I told myself he just hadn't received it. Maybe it got lost in the mail. Maybe he moved. But as I got older, I stopped making excuses for him. The truth was simple. He didn't want to be found. At school, other kids talked about their dads like they were superheroes. My dad taught me how to ride my bike. My dad took me to a baseball game. My dad says I'm his princess. I never had a story to share. When Father's Day rolled around, our teacher handed out construction paper and glue sticks for us to make cards. I hesitated, my hands tightening around the scissors. Who was I supposed to give it to? I made one for my mom instead. By the time I was 10, I stopped asking about him. By 13, I was angry. By 16, I was desperate. I found him online, saw his new life, his real family. I stared at the pictures, him and his wife, his 2 kids, vacations, birthday parties, Christmas mornings. I sent him a message. Simple, straight to the point. "Hi, Dad. It's Sophia. I hope you're doing well. I'd love to talk sometime." He read it and ignored it. No, "I'm sorry." No, "I miss you." Not even a damn acknowledgement. That night, I locked myself in the bathroom, turned on the faucet so my mom wouldn't hear me cry, and swore to myself that I would never let his absence define me. So I moved forward. At 18, I stopped hoping. I buried the need for a father so deep inside me that I almost forgot it was there. I worked 2 jobs to put myself through college. I studied until my eyes burned, determined to build a future no one could take from me. I became a nurse, not because I wanted to save people like him, but because I wanted to be someone I could be proud of. I had spent my whole life learning to live without a father, and now he couldn't live without me. I snapped back to the present, my grip still tight on the phone. Karen cleared her throat on the other end. "Sophia, are you there?" I swallowed. "Yeah, I'm here." There was an awkward pause. Then, softly, she said, "I know this is a lot, but Michael, he wants to see you." I almost laughed. He wants to see me. Now, after all these years, the audacity was almost amusing. I clenched my jaw, staring at the wall like it held the answer. "So, let me get this straight. The man who abandoned me, who ignored me when I tried to reach out, now wants me to drop everything because he's sick." Karen sighed. "I know how this must feel, but he's changed. He regrets not being there. Did he tell you that?" My voice was sharper than I intended. "Did he sit you down and tell you he regrets leaving me? Or are you just assuming?" Silence. I exhaled through my nose. "That's what I thought." Another pause. Then, in a quieter voice, she said, "Sophia, he doesn't have much time left." I should have felt something. Sadness, anger, maybe even guilt. But all I felt was a cold, suffocating weight in my chest. "I'll think about it," I muttered. It was a lie. When I hung up, I stared at my reflection in the dark window. I looked like my mother. Same tired eyes. Same tight lips. I had spent years waiting for him to care. I wasn't about to make the same mistake again. But that night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, something gnawed at me. For 25 years, he never cared if I was alive. Now suddenly my life mattered to him. And for the first time in my life, I had power. The only question was, what was I going to do with it? I didn't sleep that night. I tossed and turned, staring at the ceiling, replaying Karen's words over and over in my head. "He wants to see you. He doesn't have much time." I wasn't sure why I agreed to go. Maybe I needed to see him suffer, to watch the consequences of his choices unfold right in front of him. Maybe I wanted to hear the regret in his voice, to confirm that he finally understood what he had done to me. Or maybe, deep down, I wanted proof that I didn't need him, that I never had. Whatever the reason, I found myself standing outside the hospital the next afternoon, heart pounding, stomach twisted in knots. I wasn't ready for this. But then again, he hadn't been ready to be a father. And yet, here we were, The hallway leading to his room smelled of antiseptic and something stale, something lifeless. My footsteps felt too loud as I walked toward the door, every inch of me screaming to turn around and leave. Karen was waiting outside. Her face lit up with relief when she saw me. "Sophia," she breathed. "Thank you for coming." I nodded stiffly. My mouth was dry. My pulse hammered in my ears. "How is he?" I asked, surprising myself. I didn't think I'd care enough to ask. Karen sighed, running a hand through her graying hair. "He's weak. The doctors say he doesn't have much time left if he doesn't get a transplant." My stomach clenched. I wasn't sure if it was pity or satisfaction. "Are you ready?" she asked. Was I? No, but I nodded anyway. She pushed open the door, and I stepped inside. And there he was, Michael Parker, my father, the man who had walked away from me 25 years ago. He looked smaller than I expected, weaker. The broad-shouldered, confident man I had imagined all these years was gone. In his place was a frail, exhausted-looking man with sunken cheeks and hollow eyes. For a moment, I felt nothing, just an empty, quiet sort of numbness. Then his eyes lifted, and they met mine. And suddenly, I was 5 years old again, waiting for a father who would never come home. "Sophia," he rasped. His voice was weak, barely a whisper. Something sharp twisted inside me. I swallowed, forcing my arms to stay crossed over my chest. "Michael." Karen shifted uncomfortably beside his bed. "She came to see you." A tired smile flickered across his face. "You came?" I clenched my jaw. "I came to hear what you have to say." He exhaled, his hand trembling as he reached for the water cup beside him. Karen quickly lifted it to his lips, and I watched, unmoving, as he took slow, shaky sips. "You look just like your mother," he finally said, voice rasping. "Strong, beautiful." My stomach tightened. "Don't talk about her." A flicker of regret crossed his face. "You're right. He stopped, cleared his throat, then met my eyes again. "I know I wasn't there for you. I know I let you down." I almost laughed. "That's putting it lightly." Karen touched his arm gently. "Michael, tell her what you told me." He swallowed hard. His fingers twisted in the hospital blanket. "I never stopped thinking about you, Sophia." A bitter laugh escaped me. "Really? Is that why you ignored my messages? Why you never reached out?" "Not once?" He winced. "I was ashamed." "Of what?" I snapped. "Of abandoning me? Or of what people would think if they found out you had a daughter you left behind?" Karen sucked in a breath. Michael's hands trembled. I wasn't ready to be a father, and I wasn't ready to grow up without one. My voice cracked, my anger mixing with something else. Something raw, something I didn't want to feel. "But guess what? Life doesn't care if you're ready." He swallowed. "You have every right to be angry." "Angry?" My hands curled into fists. "You think this is about anger? You didn't just leave, Michael. You erased me. You had another family. You built a life while pretending I didn't exist." His breath hitched, his lips pressing together. "I regret it every single day." "Do you?" My voice was ice. "Or do you just regret that you need me now?" Silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. Michael's gaze dropped to his hands. "I'm dying, Sophia." I exhaled sharply, looking away. "I know." He took a slow, shaky breath. "I don't deserve to ask you for anything, but I have to. I need a kidney. And you're my only chance." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The words were simple, but they felt heavy, like they carried the weight of every year he had missed, every memory he had stolen from me. I had waited my whole life to hear him say he needed me, but not like this. "You didn't need me when I was a kid," I whispered. "You only need me now because you're dying." Karen reached for my hand, but I pulled away. Michael's eyes pleaded with me. "Sophia, please." And suddenly I had power. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one waiting. He was. I had spent 25 years aching for a father who never came. Now, he was the one desperate for me. The irony was almost poetic. I took a slow, steady breath and met his gaze, my decision already made. For the first time in my life, I said softly, "I get to choose." "And I choose me." His face crumpled. I turned and walked out of the room, my heart pounding, my hands shaking. And I didn't look back. I walked out of that hospital room without looking back. My footsteps felt heavier with each step I took, but I refused to stop. I refused to hesitate. If I turned around, if I gave him even a moment more of my time, I knew he'd find a way to make me question myself. So I didn't stop. I pushed through the sterile hallways, past the nurse's station, past the endless rows of rooms filled with people fighting for their lives. People who had families who loved them. People who had never abandoned their children. When I reached the elevator, my hands were still shaking. I pressed the button, inhaling sharply, trying to steady the storm inside me. Was I a terrible person? That question had been drilled into me for years, in books, in movies, in every story where the long-lost father finally reached out, only for the child to forgive him in the end. That's how it was supposed to go, right? I was supposed to cry. I was supposed to hug him. I was supposed to save him. But I didn't, because he hadn't saved me. The elevator doors slid open, and I stepped inside, exhaling a breath I felt like I'd been holding since I was a little girl. For so long, I had believed that if I was successful enough, good enough, strong enough, he would regret leaving me. I thought maybe, just maybe, one day he'd show up, admit he was wrong, and I would finally get the validation I had spent my entire life craving. But standing in front of him today, watching him beg for something he didn't deserve, I realized I didn't need his validation anymore. I had survived without him. I had built a life without him. I had loved, learned, struggled, and grown without him. And now, when he finally needed something from me, I had the strength to say no. The elevator doors opened to the lobby, and I walked outside, feeling the crisp evening air hit my skin. The city hummed around me, cars honking, people laughing, life moving on. And so would I. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out and saw a text from my mom. "Hey, sweetheart. Just checking in. Let me know if you want to talk. Love you." I smiled. She had been there. Always. Through every scraped knee, every school event, every late-night study session. When I felt like I had no one, I had her. And yet for years, I had wasted so much energy grieving over the absence of someone who had never even cared. I thought about all the birthdays he had missed, the graduation seats that had been empty, the nights I had cried, wondering if I just wasn't worth staying for. And then I thought about today, how I had walked into that hospital room expecting to feel anger, pain, maybe even guilt. But instead, I had felt something I never expected. Freedom, because I had finally let him go. And it felt like breathing for the first time in my life. I typed back to my mom, my fingers steady now. "I'm okay, Mom. I just needed to be reminded of what real love looks like. Love you too." Then I put my phone away, lifted my head, and walked forward into my life. He had 25 years to be my father, and he chose not to. I had 25 seconds to decide if I owed him anything, and I chose me. I walked away from the hospital that night, feeling lighter than I ever had before. For years, I had let my father's absence define me. I had carried the weight of his rejection, let it shape my choices, let it whisper in my ear that maybe I wasn't enough. But today, I made a choice. I chose me, and now I have to ask, what would you have done? Would you have given him another chance? Would you have let go of the past and saved him, despite everything? Or would you have walked away, like I did, knowing that some wounds aren't meant to be reopened? I know some people believe that blood is everything. That family, no matter how flawed, deserves forgiveness. That maybe, in his final moments, my father realized his mistakes and wanted to make things right. But does regret erase 25 years of absence? Does an apology, when it only comes out of necessity, really mean anything? I want to hear from you. Have you ever been in a situation where someone who hurt you suddenly needed you? How did you handle it? Did you forgive them? Or did you walk away, knowing that some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt? Tell me your story. Tell me what you think. Because for me, the hardest lesson I've ever learned is this. Sometimes family is just a word. And I learned that the hard way. Tell me your story. Tell me what you think. Because for me, the hardest lesson I've ever learned is this. Sometimes family is just a word. And I learned that the hard way. And that's the story of how I finally took control of my own life. Sometimes Family isn't about blood. It's about who's truly there for you. What would you have done in my place? Would you have forgiven him, or would you have walked away? Let me know in the comments below. I want to hear your thoughts and experiences. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful real-life tales of betrayal, resilience, and justice. Turn on notifications so you never miss a new upload. Thanks for watching, and until next time, remember, your worth is not defined by the people who walked away.